I've spoken to staff in Downing Street over the last few months, mainly with regard to the Partygate situation. And you just get the sense that Boris is someone who's always wanted to be liked. And that leads into so many different situations. Wanted his staff to have a good time, didn't want to be the disciplinarian, certainly didn't want to be the Gordon Brown-style Prime Minister throwing printers around and all the other allegations that were levelled against him. No, it seems that the Prime Minister just wants people to like him, and that really does create some issues, particularly when it comes to discipline and not wanting to have those big confrontational moments. And perhaps it would be easier if everyone was pretended to be all nice and that there are no issues. But that of course creates problems. However, we also need to look at the context in which we're sitting. Of course, these sorts of scandals happen under every Prime Minister, and it is very normal for lots of the country to want a Prime Minister to resign in the middle of a parliament.
I mean, is this a problem we're seeing played out here? He's a man who just wants to be liked, and the nation did all love him and fall in love with him. That was the Boris Johnson magic fairy dust that managed to unite both wings of his party, get the red wall and the red trousers of the Conservative Party faithful. But when the going gets tough, being likeable just doesn't work.
I think that's exactly right. I think by inclination, Boris Johnson, in terms of personal matters, is a bit of a libertarian. He likes the idea, merry England of King Charles II almost. He's not, by any stretch, puritanical. I think there is a strong element of wanting to be liked, as Tom was saying, by everyone around him. Bernard Ingham, who was Margaret Thatcher's press secretary, had a saying of, "Please spare me a politician who needs to be liked." Boris is having to kind of grow up in office, I suppose, which is not necessarily the ideal way around. And, if we were in a happier spell with living standards increasing, the economy doing very well, then I don't think the stories would cut quite as hard as they do. I'm still personally to be convinced of that 60% saying, oh, yeah, Boris should resign. The level of intensity behind that view, is that something that's actually going to affect people's votes? It always seems to me that's probably a more exciting answer to give an opinion pollster than a shrug, don't know, or no.
Well, let's go back to Chris and put exactly that to him. I mean, this 6 in 10 who want Boris to resign, would we be safe in assuming that, 5 out of the 10 might be those who would back Labour anyway? And actually, the amount of discontent amongst the general public who back Boris isn't as bad as it may look.
I mean, if 5 out of 10 are saying that they're going to back Labour anyway, then my God, the Conservatives are in a much worse situation than we thought, because they've just got themselves their comfortable majority already, if that's the case. I think that what we're seeing here is pretty consistent across everything. And that's the reason, I think the Conservatives have a lot to worry about at the moment. You're right, it's easy, particularly midterm, when people are a little bit upset, to tell us pollsters that they want the Prime Minister to resign. But there's lots of other scary numbers out there for the Conservatives as well. Nearly half of those who voted Conservative at the last general election currently don't tell us that they'd vote Conservative if there was a general election tomorrow. The economy, the crucial reason why people trust and vote for the Conservatives are losing faith on that issue in lots of opinion polls. Labour now leads the Tories on that question of who would be best to manage the economy. More people in many polls say they think Keir Starmer would make a better Prime Minister to Boris Johnson. More people say they think a Labour government would be better than a Conservative government. So, you can pick apart a single question. And I think there's another question about whether this is midterm blues. But I think given the consistency we're seeing across all polling at the moment, I do think that the Conservatives are in a difficult place, and they're going to have to take some big, bold decisions if they want to bring this back in time for the next election.